Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening to the Quality Hub, chatting with ISO experts. I'm your host, Xavier Francis, and today I'm here with Brian Smith and Brian Smatko here of Core Business Solutions. Thanks so much for being here, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good to be here.
Good to be here.
Awesome. This week's podcast, we're going to be talking about change management and clause 6.3 of ISO 9001. So, to Mr. Smith here, how can organizations effectively communicate upcoming changes to all relevant stakeholders to ensure smooth implementation? Now, I know that you said, it's important to do it, but can you give us some examples that might be useful?
Sure.
We don't just get on the bullhorn and go, hey, we're doing this now, right?
You might. That's appropriate. This is probably the biggest pitfall, honestly. I mean, we're talking about instead of ready, fire, aim, we're talking about taking a long-range look at a major change here. And everybody that's running an operation is going to hit some of these marks. It's not like you're walking around backwards. And the other thing with the big picture stuff, I just was going back when Brian was talking about the inspection room and stuff like that. Get your big things covered, but expect unexpected things too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't lose your mind when something pops up. Be ready for that. And having the key players involved is going to help, minimize the amount of surprises. But you really want to look at major changes like a project, like any kind of improvement project where you have planned, you have a team, you have a team leader, you have representatives, and you have scheduled meetings with inputs and outputs and expectations very clear. So, roles and responsibilities being understood. Everybody around here has heard me use the RACI concept to the point where they're sick of hearing it. But identify who's responsible and who's accountable and who's consulted and who's informed up front. And that can change, but that's really important, is for certain people don't have to be involved in the entire project, but they need to be involved in some of it.
Right.
We need to consult them. That's your maintenance crew.
Mm-hmm.
You will be well advised to get them involved very early, because you might not like what they have to say, but they're going to know some of the ramifications of the change.
So the communication needs to be not just after the decision is made, during the decision making, also maybe giving people a heads up, hey, we might have some change. Don't worry, we've got you covered. We're going to communicate all that. You can assuage some resistance by being upfront with people and communicating things. So that doesn't mean it's going to fix the whole problem, but hey, the what, the why, the who, you might have some extra responsibilities. Hey, don't worry about it. We're going to have other people for that. Yada, yada, yada. You can assuage some of that resistance probably by communicating properly and specific details, how it's going to affect individuals or groups of individuals.
And that can be easier said than done, because sometimes someone who's run a machine for 25 years doesn't have the same method of communication that somebody from the front office does.
Right.
You got to take that into consideration. If you have somebody stomping around saying this is never going to work, of course we don't like to hear that, and that's not helpful. But you might want to get that person aside and find out what they're really talking about.
Yeah,
why do you think this isn't going to work? Because we got to know.
I guess, again, two-way communication, not this is what we're doing. Be ready for that feedback of, well, that could cause these problems, and do it from the people that are going to be doing a lot of the work. Now, Mr. Smatko, could you share some common pitfalls that organizations face when implementing changes to their QMS, and maybe some ideas how to avoid them if it's possible?
Absolutely. So, and change generally requires some change of documentation, whether we're changing a procedure, whether we're changing roles and responsibilities, assigning authorities, and things of that nature. The standard itself in 7.5 has certain requirements when it comes to documentation, right? So companies, again, through the change management auto form and the core platform, have the ability to identify documents and what revisions would be made to those documents to ensure that, again, in a planned manner, we've identified what changes need to be made to our documentation process. And then we make those changes. And again, like Brian was saying, right, at the end of the day, if you're communicating with your employees on that change, and as you're putting these documents together, include those people that would be involved. If I'm putting a work instruction for the worker that's going to be running that machine, I might want to have a conversation with the guy that's actually going to be running the machine, right? Because the things that I'm saying from a high level, the things that I read from the training of the machine itself from the manufacturer or the high level documents may not resonate with the guy that's actually running it, right? You may need to interpret and give him the bullet points. But at the end of the day, they're the folks that you would want to incorporate in that change. Because again, that leads to one of the pitfalls is resistance to change, right? Employees that, feel comfortable in the jobs they do gives them confidence to come to work every day because they know that they can do it right, and do it each time right.
Right.
When you start adding that employee into an environment where it's a new machine and a new process, a new material, new people involved, sometimes it gives them that uneasy feeling that they're not sure of what they're doing, and then they become resistant to that change. So, the way I see it is, and the way I talk to my customers is, you want to bring everybody involved on that change, right? Down to the guy that's running the machine and the maintenance worker and the inspection people and anybody else that would have a hand in that change. Because at the end of the day, these are the folks that are actually incorporating the change, right? We want to get their take on it because the easier they understand what the change is and what their responsibilities are, the easier time they have to accept that.
Right.
And then I think one of the last things is unrealistic expectations from change, right? Especially from leadership, right? I make a change, I add a new machine, I add a new process, I expect my profits to be at 50%.
Right.
Is that realistic? No, not at all. You still have everything from the upfront part of the sales and taking in those sales and everything that happens between then to where the customer, the part is getting, or their service is getting put out the door.
Well, marketing. Right. Yeah. I mean, from marketing, people know it's there.
Absolutely right. And so, other unrealistic changes, expectations would be that I'm going to have all this free time now because I'm going to be able, this machine's going to do everything for me. And then employees find out, well, I got to be involved. I got to check this and I got to do this to the machine or to the process. So again, that communication, that awareness with those folks directly involved with it, right? It's great for everybody in upper management, like Brian was saying, through management review, to ensure that the change is communicated and that what you want to communicate is driven at that meeting so that you know what the message is and what we want to provide to our employees. But the follow-up to the employees is really one of the most important things because, again, it tempers those unrealistic expectations of what this change could bring or what it would intend to be.
Right. And getting their input on, we didn't think of that.
Absolutely. Look, 9 times out of 10, and I don't know anybody that's working in manufacturing or in the service industry won't tell you that their employees are the key source of what's working and what's not working within the organization. So the more that they listen to the grumblings and the hailings of the things that they do or like or don't like, it is easier for those management people to, again, collect those in what's happening and take it into consideration and then research, right? Go out and check it. Is it actually happening? Right? Because, sometimes employees like to talk, but a lot of times employees that take pride in what they do are going to tell you what is the shortcomings of the process, of the procedure, of the machine, because they want to get it right.
Right. I think probably a lot of the resistance, maybe you guys could answer this with yes now, it doesn't necessarily come from not wanting it to change. They want to make sure they're going to be successful in what they do. It's not laziness. It's not, here we go again, unless that's a history of, we're trying another idea. This is the 5th one in 2 years. And we've all ended and haven't done well, but that's obviously an issue in and of itself. But people want to do the job, do their job right.
Even in that scenario, it just sounds like unrealistic expectations, right? If I have if I'm getting a new ERP system, right, and I've been told and sold that this is going to do X, Y, and Z for me, and this is going to make my life so much easier, but no one's telling you all the training that's required and the conversion for your organization and the training and competencies that will be expected to run such a program, right? And so, yes, the expectation is it's going to do X, Y, and Z, but you may not realize X, Y, and Z for another 8 to 12 months after you incorporate the program or the change because, again, you have to get your people coached up. Because at the end of the day, it's the people that are providing that process or the service or whatever it is the change you incorporate.
Absolutely. Mr. Smith, how can organizations ensure that changes are properly documented and traceable when we're going through these changes?
Well, your revision control is big here. And that's a challenge for everyone that ever had a operation is revision control. But you really got to watch your revision control now, because instructions are going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to have the most recent. You really got to take a big look at travelers and instructional type things, because I can't tell you how many times we've gone into an operation and half the travelers not signed.
Mm.
And they're like, well, that's the way we used to do it. But the machine takes care of that now, and we don't have to sign. Well, then change your traveler.
Right.
Right? Because to an outsider, it looks like you're skipping these steps.
Right.
So staying up with the documentation that's affected
Mm-hmm.
and making sure you're on the right rev is probably it's tough to do, but you got to do it.
Or even if it's going to be new stuff, if you're doing a new product line, you're going to have all of that documentation. Now, you might use something as let's say it's a similar product line. Let's say you're doing 2 different types of sneakers instead of 1 for manufacturing, or 2 different types of services, that one might be for military, one might be for consumer. They might be similar, but you still want to make sure that the new stuff is also written and documented the proper way.
Yeah.
And understood, right? You can write
Yeah.
I could write a policy and procedure that makes sense to the upper management, but the guy
Right.
that's running it, that's using that work instruction, has no clear idea of what's being said.
And that's a good point, because maybe the documentation isn't instantly.
No, absolutely. And that's
Maybe you write the documentation after you figured out the best way, and then you do like we've said this so many times on the podcast. Get the people that do it involved in writing the documentation.
That's what I was just
and
going
the
to say.
instruction,
For those times, you rely on these folks, these people that you have in your facilities, to provide the services or products that you make every day.
Yep.
So don't ever underestimate their ability to recognize when something needs to change in a document.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that run the machines, make the processes, go out and meet the customers. They're the ones that have firsthand knowledge about what's happening and what may not be right.
Exactly. All right. Well, this has been a great talk. Clearly, there's more that can go into change management, but this certainly hits a lot of points. Do any of you guys have any last thoughts or other thoughts you might want to share with the group when it comes to change management?
So, your capital planning process is really important. However it is that you do cap planning, but right then and there, even if it may not come to fruition for months, you want to regiment the change, because you got a lot to consider. Documentation, records. You're not going to prevent every pitfall with change.
Right.
So don't think you are, and don't get frustrated when unexpected things happen, but minimize them and have a plan when something unexpected pops up. Have a category to put it into and have somebody accountable for dealing with it.
Mm-hmm. But that's really helpful.
Temper your expectations, get the right people involved. Don't expect it to go perfectly, and don't expect that everybody understands why this change is being made. It might be obvious to you because you see data and you see everything all the time, but the people that are down there with their nose up against that machine or in that process don't see that, and
Right.
It might not be obvious to them.
Right.
So, make sure that it's open communication and people know why. Most people that machinists and we keep talking about that, but process, the people that do are focused on doing, and it's going fine for them right now.
Right.
And they don't see the big picture. Make
Right.
sure that they do.
Yeah.
Because that'll make it a lot easier transition.
Okay.
No, and I agree with what Brian said. At the end of the day, it's really about, are the people understanding of why we're making the change,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you have the people on board of your facility or your company or whatever the case is, and they're all on board with the change, then everybody is excited for the change.
That's right.
Because they all know what their responsibilities, expectations, why are we making this change, right? Just like Brian said, I'm a upper management. I might be the CEO, CFO, operations manager. Sure, I have data. I know why the change is happening. But the people that have been comfortable doing this job, doing this function, asking them to do something new now, may not understand why that change
Right.
is about to take place.
Or they might be like, hey, I just got this right.
A simple, and again, to refer to the standard 7.3 and 7.4 for awareness and communication, almost expect you to communicate. And what topics will you communicate? It would be about that change.
Right.
Why are we making it? This is what's going to be expected of you. So I know where I fit into that change,
Yep.
and I know why the change is happening. And again, it's about, so I know that maybe the change isn't because I did something wrong.
Right.
Company employees want to feel that, like you said, I want
Yeah.
to know that I'm doing the job, doing it right, and doing it right each time.
Yeah.
So bringing your folks in on the overall. You don't have to give them the data. No one says
Right.
you need to provide every employee with the data, but an overall arching review of why are we making this change
Yeah.
goes a long way within an organization, gets people on board and kind of tempers those unrealistic expectations.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you guys again for being here today. Really appreciate it, Brian and Brian. And we've had you on before. We'll have you on again in the future. And can't tell you how much I appreciate this.
I appreciate it. Thank
Good
you.
to be here.
Great to be here.
Awesome. We want to thank everyone who's listened to our podcast today, and we hope it's been informative for you. Now, if you're looking for more information about core business solutions, how we can help you with ISO certification, cybersecurity, customized training, maybe even help you with how you're going to communicate some changes to people, please email us at info@thecoresolution.com. You can also visit our website at www.thecoresolution.com. And if you haven't already followed us on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube, be sure to do so. And that way you won't miss the next Quality Hub podcast when it's released next week. Have a great day, everyone.